Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the 2BSilent podcast. So, in this episode, Brian and I are talking about an experiment that we've been doing and that we've invited the members of our program to experience with us. And this challenge involves for 42 days, we're reducing our engagement in anything related to the consumption of any form of media to less than 20 minutes a day. So media includes YouTube, podcasts, audiobooks, every social media platform, all entertainment platforms like Netflix, etc., and all news media. Essentially, media means anything that you use your phone or computer for that's not work or direct communication with friends and family. So, in this conversation, I'm sharing my experience with it so far, and Brian and I are talking about the ins and outs of the details of it, and also just kind of the energetic and mental impact that it's having on us so far. So, I hope you enjoy this conversation, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Oh, there you go.
Watch out now.
It's recording. Don't say shit you don't mean.
Hey, we just got a new member. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that.
Pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So,
Working our way to that 2,700 mark.
one person every year. We'll be 2,700 years old.
Perfect. Either way, it's a win.
Yeah, true.
Which one comes first? Either way, it's a win.
Yeah. So, dude, fucking A, the world. I think the world's kind of fucked if everyone's if everyone's doing what I was doing a week ago.
I don't know.
No,
what were you doing a week ago?
No. It's funny. With using the phone a lot and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah,
it's crazy,
it's funny.
right?
Yeah, I've been reflecting on like the earlier parts of my life, because when I was really young, like when I was like 16 or whatever, and all through high school and even in college too, I would say I was like super like anti-television.
Yeah.
Just in general, like it wasn't just like the news.
Sure,
It was just like everything. I was like, it was almost like this thing that I had. I was like, whatever. And it was like I was just thinking about like during that time, like how much, not just how much energy I had, but also like how things were flowing and how like productive I was, how much momentum I had and the different things that I was interested in and all that. And I mean that carried through until like really recently. And it wasn't until more like recently that I started feeling like I was juggling a lot of things, but nothing was like making the progress that I wanted to, and I didn't feel like it has much energy. And it's funny since I since I like kind of like cut all that stuff like the audiobooks and YouTube and like I know you said like do a reduced amount, and like I would, but I was just like it was it brought me back to those days, those earlier days, and I just had this kind of like fuck you attitude, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna cold turkey it for a little while
and see what happens.
And it's so great.
It's pretty dramatic, right?
So dramatic.
I mean, who knew?
It's so awesome.
I mean, but that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, and that's my point. If people actually take it seriously, is that even for people who, we spend a lot of time, I would say more time than the average person spends in meditative states, working on spiritual things, whatever you want to call it, energy work, whatever. And yet, we get overwhelmed too. And it's amazing that you can just pick this one thing that seems totally innocuous, and it's even under the guise for us that it's actually helping in those endeavors, that we're learning more,
right?
That we're, but it's insidious, isn't it? It's like,
that's the thing that made it so insidious.
it away actually makes you more clear, gives you more energy. I mean, on a physiological level, it makes sense to me, right? Just that,
Yeah.
because your brain is the organ in your body that uses the most energy throughout the day. I mean, like not comparable to anything else in the body. So the brain
Right.
uses up way more energy than anything else. And so if you're engaged like that constantly, where it's just frivolous, like firing of your brain, I mean, you are using a shit ton of energy. Your brain's chewing through the finite pie of energy you have in the day. And then when you go to do something that's important to you, it's like it's lackluster. You don't have the focus or energy that you have. And you think, oh, I might just be tired today, or maybe my sleep wasn't good last night, or you make up all these excuses, right? And what it is, and so what I mean, to me, this is a very, what I would consider an elegant experiment, right? Means that, you know, the simplest thing is done to see what effect it will have, and that it takes time for your brain to sort of ramp down and then uh sort of recalibrate.
Oh, I still feel like I'm ramping
Oh,
down. I
sure.
still feel, I mean, yeah, I guess it's been a week to the day, and yeah, I can still feel it slowing down a little more every day.
Oh, definitely.
My dreams are more vivid. Like
Because it has to come from somewhere, right? That energy has to come from somewhere. And if you're constantly going into a deficit every day, for the most part, where's that going to catch up? Well, now you don't have energy to remember your dreams. Now you don't have energy to focus on, your different types of meditation, or analysis, or practice, or whatever, right? It's
yeah,
like,
just
and
literally anything that you care about.
forget about
Yeah,
contemplation. It's overwhelmed by, talk about inducing a monkey mind type syndrome.
yeah.
you know this is what it is. And so what an elegant experiment, just to take one thing away and to see what effect that has over a select period of time, right? So I would expect, from my own, observation of that, and doing it for 42 days, and then sort of correlating that with everyone else's, regardless of how much effort they've been putting into this other stuff for, an extended period of time or whatever. um you know what effect that will have in general, and what effect it would have on everyone if they did that. If they said, oh, okay, well, I'm only gonna, you know look at the headlines, or the whole thing. Like, if that's really something you need to engage with, then what am how much am I going to look at that over the course of a day, right? Like, if you're really going to reduce it down to like a 20-minute segment, then you have to be really efficient about doing it too, right? And so, and my suggestion for that would be, do it relatively early so that your brain has a chance to ramp back down and then get into a better zone, before, the day and before bedtime. And, you'll become very efficient at that, you know, and I think what will happen is, at least it did for me, it's like, what do I really need here? It's kind of the way I thought of it. It was, and I didn't do this purposefully, but afterwards, thinking about it, I thought it's very much the way, like, people like, Tim Ferriss, Ty Lopez, these guys talk about, like, how they read books, right? It's like they read the table of contents, they read the description, they'll read, like, a chapter or a few paragraphs of the conclusions, and then, like, scan the book and just see, like, oh, that's interesting, let me read that, and that's it. And so they go through a book a day because they're only skimming it and picking out pieces that are hopefully the nuggets or pearls that will, they can pick up and utilize in their day. So I found for myself that, my 20 minutes was getting so efficient, it was just like, oh, okay, that's what they have to say about that. The rest is just, recounting and labeling and, putting more garbage on top of it. So for a specific sentence that gives you the context of what they're talking about, or a couple of sentences, and then the rest of it's just, you know fleshing that out, so if it's something really important, I listen to the flesh out, but if it's not, I'm just like, I'm skipping to the next one. So even that has become more efficient. So I'm just getting like, yep, okay, I understand it, boom, that's it. Boom, yep, I understand it. Oh, okay, good. It's like I got the information, boom. If it's something that's really important to me, then I'll let that go and play through the segment, which is usually only 5 minutes anyway, right? So but then I'm done, right? It's like even that's become hyper efficient. So it serves us even on that side, right? And so that's, I feel like that's extremely valuable, and I think that it will only get more clear as time goes on. So I find it on one hand appalling, and the other hand fascinating that's the case, right? And so you know but I found even enjoyment, entertainment wise, like if I watch a show or a movie with Nina or something like that, that becomes more enjoyable. I don't
Yeah.
know how, because I've always enjoyed that stuff. I don't know why it's more enjoyable, but I just feel like I have maybe more brain cells dedicated to just watching something and enjoying it and kind of getting in there and going with it, laughing my ass off, or action adventure, whatever it is, right? It's like I'm more engaged because there's more brain cells going toward that or something like that, right? I'm really engaged in it. So I don't know. I feel like it's a win-win on every side, to be honest with you. So there you have it. It's an interesting experiment, though. Seriously. I mean, I found it very valuable, at least for me, and I'm hoping everybody else does too.
Yeah, totally. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. And yeah, I just feel like I'm like, I have my life back.
Yep. Yep.
So,
It's like, I come back to that Peterson thing. It's like, where like on one of his early lectures where he's telling his, beginning class, like, you spend this much time on these things, and you can't even figure out why you watched it to begin with, but it just sucked you in, and then you're like even embarrassed that you watched it, like it has a negative impact on you, and you
yeah,
still
right.
go for it again,
Yeah.
right? It's like, and I'm like, that's just, it's so true.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
and it's insidious how it sneaks in there. It's literally like a parasite. It just sneaks in there. You don't even know where it came from, and all of a sudden, you're sucked in and feeding this shit your energy every day.
Well, it's crazy too how it like conditions such a short attention span too, because it's like
Right.
there's always, it's like your brain's always thinking. Like I noticed even before I started this, like that I would be listening to something, but there was a part of my brain that was always thinking like there was like, oh, but maybe there would be something more engaging or more important or more valuable or whatever on this thing or that thing or this other thing, or
Right.
maybe I should switch or look at that. And my friend, he texted me the other day and he said that the YouTube algorithm, like he was noticing that like it knows when he's like it knows what to recommend when he's looking at YouTube on his television versus on his phone. Like there's like different content here and different content here.
Right.
And he was saying that one of the things that he said that like when you turn on YouTube on your um on your TV, it's like the remote has usually like a one enter button, one single enter button, right? And when you open the app, like it automatically will land, like it'll highlight a video in the upper left hand corner. So it's like if you just hit enter after you open the app, it'll play that first, that like top recommendation for you.
Yep.
And he said like it every single time it suggests to him a video that has some like clickbaity image with some weird title that's less than like 20 seconds long. He says he's like, I watch it every time. And
That's it.
he
That's
was
your
like,
toe in the water of the pool to
yeah.
see how the temperature is before
He
you dive
said-
in.
he texted me images, like screenshots of these videos, and they all have like 2.2 million views, 5 million views, 10 million views.
Right. Right.
I was like, that's so crazy. Like, I didn't even know that that was like a category of video, like videos under 20 seconds long with like weird short thing or whatever.
Right.
But it's like a whole, it's a whole, yeah, there's like an avatar for that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I just I find it fascinating. Just the whole thing I find fascinating, you know, in one respect is that even for people who are trying to be, you know, spend more time going inward and, you know, all that that entails. And even for those people, it's, you know, it's grabbed
Yeah.
us and
Yeah.
like sucked us into that wormhole, you know, and,
Well,
you
what's
know,
the lure, you know? Like for me, like you said, it was definitely like information, like it's the
yeah.
edutainment thing. It's like, oh, I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly being learning, learning, learning. Oh, there's so much stuff to learn, 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 learn. But it's like you lose your, I mean, and to some degree, it's like I feel like I lost my center in the sense that like I always felt like I had, like I said, you know, so much energy for all these things that I was like interested in, the things that I actually care about, you know.
Mm,
And it's just, it's amazing to see how that energy can get sucked away even by something that when it's being utilized as a tool of controlling attention
right.
by these big, you know, algorithms, it's like
Right.
it turns into something else in a way. It's very
Well, you
strange.
know, I mean, it's huge to, you know, it's huge, I think, to understand that now before they, you know, instigate anything else. Right.
What do you mean?
So, I mean, like, you know, I mean, I know this might be a little farther out, but like it's the Ready Player One
Yeah,
scenario, right?
for sure. Yeah. The
I
virtual
mean,
reality version of the internet. Oh, it's
yeah,
coming. Oh, it's for sure. That's
you know,
coming.
because
Yeah.
it won't be like, oh, they'll be giving those headsets away for free. And they
Yeah.
won't be these clunky things. They'll be streamlined and extremely, you know, small tech, you know, kind of things where it's just a pair of glasses that you're slipping on or goggles or whatever, you know, it's just like it'll be
It's weird. Like I've been thinking about, I feel like there will be, it's almost like it's causing, I feel like it's making like a rift in like humanity almost, you know?
yeah. Well,
Like,
it's, you
cause
know,
if
to
you're
me, it's perfectly
listening,
poised. It's perfect, you know, I mean, I'm not usually a cynical person, but definitely a skeptical person. I mean, if you wanted a big, you know, if you wanted to hide in plain sight, which seems to be the case these days, you know, it's like if you wanted to make a society of drones, what a better way to do it?
well, the thing is too, it's like I noticed that when I first cut out all those apps, like it was it, well, first, you know, there was just the intrusion of like the monkey mind, like crazy, like I told you, like songs playing on repeat in my head, like disturbingly to a disturbing level, to like um to that. And as it's settled down, it's more like that's starting to settle down. That those waters are starting to calm, but there's still like me, the like getting closer to like the energetic and mental state that I'm normally in, which is like what's the level of anxiousness? What's the level of like just, you know, stray thoughts? What's the level of, you know, worrying about stuff or thinking about
Hmm.
what's going to happen with this or what's going to happen with that? And um, it's amazing how those all that content that is put forward to us to hold our attention literally does just that, regardless of whether it's informational, educational, or just entertainment. It's like it's captivating your attention and pulling it away from you, like,
Yep.
and the reality of like who you are in this moment, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're like, how you know, and for it's like even yeah, it's I was it's just like a it's just like a band-aid or like a palliative. It's like it doesn't it's not really, and that's what I meant, like, even before you suggested doing this kind of reduction of, you know, engaging in those things, it was, I like I had said, I was even starting to consider, like, writing down, like, what is the practical benefit of all these things that I think are helping me out so much, you know? And and really, it's just it's just distracting me from like my real thoughts, my real concerns, adjusting myself so that I'm better in this moment, so I can make my so I have more energy and focus and clarity of mind to actually make my life more of what I want it to be, and work
Right.
on the, like you said, the things that are important, you know. It's just so strange. It's
Well, it'll be
yeah.
interesting to see then on the, so, by taking something away, let's just generalize that and call it, uh, you know, uh, reducing the amount of input. So
Mhm.
that's a negative, right? We're taking something away, but that means that something else is being expanded. So that means, your free thought and able to focus on other things. And so it'll be interesting to see, if you can, you've had a baseline of that for a while, like as far as your end results go, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
it's like,
mhm,
okay, I've been doing, let's just say, even if you can't think back that far, maybe even 3 to 6 months, right? Of like, okay, I've been doing this and this and this. I've been pounding it out. I've been doing whatever. And, here's the literally the incremental increases or the plateau that I've been on for 3 to 6 months. Brutally honest, and then when you get to that point of, maximum reduction, whatever you can do for that, um, and then start comparing, like, okay, is it the same,
mhm,
or has the needle moved in the positive for me after I've applied myself more like this? I've had more free space in my head. I've had less input coming in, you know is my, output, yep, I feel better, I feel more clear, I'm sleeping better, I'm all of these things. And the energy that I'm pushing out toward what I want to achieve, let's say, is even the same or maybe a little bit more. But is that actually, as an end result, is that showing more progress than what it was prior to that? So if we can see that direct correlation between those two things and it's consistent for everyone, then we can sort of speculate and say, okay, you know this is getting closer from correlation to causation, right? And if that's happening on a nation or a worldwide scale, that means 70% of the population, and over the 90 percentile of that population is being deflected from their life. That's huge.
mhm.
That's huge. So it's like, okay, that's huge. I mean, that's a game changer for a lot of people. So and so I also, I wonder about those things, right? It's like,
What do you mean?
just, you know like for me, it would be like choosing just as an experiment, right? Like as a just an experiment. Like choose a, calculate out what you think is a good hour, and then like put that out as a general post on Facebook or the public or whatever, right? Somehow, whatever you do, Instagram, whatever it is. And
But what out?
the challenge to
Mm,
do that,
mhm.
and just see if it has legs, like without any, like you don't care at all, like if it does or it doesn't, just as a almost as a really positive, what do they call those things? Public service announcement, like, hey, most of these challenges are goofy and they're, fun or whatever, but it's like, for whatever purposes. But here's one, for humanity's purpose, right? So it's like, give this a try and see what happens, um, and that's the challenge, and that's it. And just lay it out and see what happens. If it has legs, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's like,
Well,
you
what do
do.
you think the challenge should be?
I think it should be the same as that we gave to our members, which is like, if you could articulate it in a very short synopsis so people don't, think that there's anything else behind it other than, a true wake up call, not a woke wake up call, but a true wake up call, and not putting it as a moral dilemma, but just as a practical thing, you know, give this a try and see what happens. What other things can you do?
No, but I mean, what are the parameters?
Just, like, look at your phone. Every phone has those apps on it that tell you, how much you've utilized your phone in the day. Right. And so, just take a brutally honest baseline of that, regardless of what it is. And, take out phone calls, take out, those types of communication. Um, and then, everything else data wise, right? Like videos and God knows what, right? Like all of that stuff, from entertainment to just complete, distraction,
YouTube,
or
Instagram,
newsworthy, anything like that, right? So
Facebook, whatever
yeah,
whatever other. I mean, there's so many social
watching the
media
news,
apps.
having,
My friend was telling me
CNN
Reddit
or
is like a
Fox,
huge
or
thing too. Like
yeah,
apparently Reddit's like people, it's like this huge. I've never really used it, but it's like
no,
people get into these deep, like not deep. I mean, I don't know, some deep, I'm sure, but it's just threads of like these conversations and everybody kind of chiming in on different topics and stuff like that. And it's kind of like, in the same way that Twitter creates all these conversations between anybody talking to anybody very fast, very popular. It's like instead of the short version of that, it's like very long, detailed,
oh,
can be very long,
mhm.
and it's one of the biggest websites on the internet. So
No kidding. Huh.
I probably sound like like, yeah,
Advertisement
Dustin,
for
where
them.
the hell have you been? You didn't know about how
No, I mean,
popular
I
Reddit
didn't.
was?
I
But,
always thought it was,
but
I mean, if you would have asked me, do you know what Reddit is? I would have said, like, I know the name, but I always thought it was just like a place for crafty people to get together and share how to press flowers or some shit like that.
well, I think that's more I don't even remember. I forget the name of it. There's like a vision board website basically where you
Um,
post like images, collections of images kind of thing.
yeah.
Um, but
I just
anyway,
figured it
yeah,
was
no,
a
I know.
how-to, but more
But
for a crafty kind of, like, here's how you make preserves. Here's how you press flowers. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that.
yeah, it's kind of like
Here's how you
everything.
do, landscaping for this
It
by yourself. Sort of a DIY kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's like it's just like you
Yeah.
can
See,
just
I had
talk
no
about
idea that it
anything,
was like that.
questions and answers,
Yeah. Didn't
conversation.
know it was that.
Yeah. So anyway, so basically like 90% of the internet. Yeah. So anyway, but I just trying to clarify what's in that category, you know, of like when we're looking at our phones. And because I want to, if we're going to put this out or, kind of give people an idea of like what I'm doing, what you're doing, what we were suggesting to the members and some of the benefits we've got from it, feel like being clear about the parameters will be really helpful,
Yeah,
so.
definitely. And
So you
yeah.
were saying you look at like basically the app that shows like how many hours using your phone, which
Just so you have
apps
a
you use.
baseline, because we know
Yeah.
our memories are flawed. So
Yeah.
it's
And the
like,
computer too, I think now has that, or some
oh, it
computers
does
have
it?
that where
Yeah.
you can keep track of that
It
screen time
makes sense that
basically.
it would,
Yeah.
just as a sort of a, that's the dog and pony show from the big tech, right? It's like, we'll put this on there because we're really concerned about you. And it's like, it's all because they know nobody will use it,
I
so
never
it's like,
used it.
nobody ever uses it,
I should be the person that would use it.
but we
Yeah.
don't, right?
I'm
Because
just like, yeah, I don't need that. That's fine.
we're, it's like we're intellectually the unconscious alcoholic, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
where it's like, I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
It's like,
I can stop
then
anytime
that
I want.
means that then that means you have a problem. It's like, if you don't think you have a problem, that's the first layer of problem right there.
Yeah.
That's the first indicator. That's the first red flag, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so it's like, but it's done that to huge swath of the population globally, not just us, right? But we're the tip of the spear because America in general, because we have so much free time compared to other places. Well, supposedly free time, right? Free time because we're, not many people are struggling for, percentage wise. I know there are people out there, and it's not to lessen their suffering. It's just to say that, by comparison, in our country, we have far fewer people that are struggling day to day with feeding themselves or having a roof over their head or whatever, basic things. And so that leaves a crap ton of time that's just sort of free time, right? And people engage it by you know sort of, I don't know, digitally licking their wounds, like, oh, poor me, whatever, it's like, I've got this or that, instead of putting all that effort toward whatever it is that you need to accomplish in your life, whether it's getting things done, or who knows, building a business, all of the
You know
things
what
that.
the amazing thing about it too to me is, like, you notice all these patterns. Like when you look at a lot of that content, um, you notice patterns of people emulating each other.
Mhm,
Like I know that it's really like ubiquitous online, like, you whether it's, let's just take YouTube for example, like you see people, it's like everybody does things a certain way. It's like because other people are doing it that way, or because like one popular person does it that way or whatever. And I was even looking on Amazon at some different books, and looking at, like, okay, it was like within this certain category of book, there was all these different translations of it, just tons of different translations. And I started looking at all the previews because I wanted to see, like, the first few pages of the translation to
mhm,
actually see, like, oh, like, which one do I prefer, that sort of thing.
yep,
And, um, and it's not necessarily just like all translated books are like this, or whatever, because it was like literally like this category of translated books, like nobody showed even the first few pages of the translation. It was always just the content of the introduction, and then it cut out and didn't show, like, that beginning of it, so you could see what. And I was like, that's so impractical in a way for the publisher, because it's like, you want to show people at least a little bit so they could get a taste of it and see what they prefer, or like, know that they want to buy this copy versus that copy. And it was like, but all of them cut out before they actually showed any of that. And I was like, to me, I don't know if it was just the lens that I was seeing it through at the time, or just because I've been thinking about things in that way or whatever, but it just seemed like, is it just that, like, all of them are doing it that way because all of them are doing that way? And I wonder about stuff like that. Like, I'm sure there's other reasons, but it's just so like, and that was one of the things that happened for me too, was like listening to all these other people all the time, taking in all this content. I didn't realize the effect it was having on me, in the sense that I became so externally referential. Like, it's like, well, I should put myself into the container that I'm kind of perceiving is the norm for what's out there. But I feel like the people that are creating some of the best content are not constantly taking in all this other content from other people. They're diving deep into their whatever their thing is, and and yeah, and that creates something that actually produces something of value, or something
mhm.
that's unique, which is, yeah, I don't know. So it's
Yeah,
just
because it's their
weird.
experience, which, seems to, I mean, even if it's idiosyncratic, to some degree, it's like, but I think that makes it actually more valuable, right? Because there are people that are actually,
Mm,
you know, whatever their work is, they're doing the work, they're taking the information and applying it. It's sort of like, coming back to what you said earlier, it's like, of all the educational things that you watched, or things for, to, enhance your knowledge about a certain thing or whatever it is, how much of that did you actually, it's like, how much of that have you actually done or used, even wrapping it in your own practice, in order to see if it had legs or not, to see if it had any kind of value other than just novelty. And so, because I mean, in reality, we know that novelty happens, just because it's, I mean, it means new, right? So it's like something that's new and shiny. It's the shiny new thing, right? And you use it for a while, and then you figure out, I could have, I probably could have done this better, or not, like, let's refine it down, or this isn't workable, or for the long run, or whatever it is. But it takes time for that to happen, right? um, the other part is that it's like, nobody likes buyer's remorse, right? So it's like, you buy the new car, and then, it's great car for, a little bit of time. And then all of a sudden you start noticing the little flaws that, you don't like. And, but when somebody asks you, they always say, oh, it's the best car I've ever had. Oh, it's so great. Look at this. Look at this. It's like, yeah, but it sucks down all this gas, or it does all this, or it leaks when it rains, or who knows, right? So nobody likes to do that. And I think it's even more deceptive when it becomes um, informational, that it's still just information. It's not knowledge. It's just information until you apply it, right? And then, once you apply it and have experience around it for a bit of time, depending on what it is, right? I mean, that's the thing with physical applications, right? You go to YouTube and you look up how to change a tire. Your tire either stays on and you change it in a good way, or it falls off and it doesn't work, right? Or you're doing something wrong, right? So it's like it's immediate, it's right there. And so, but we tend to, we tend to do that even with intellectual information, right? But it's just information until you apply it. Once you apply it and you have experience around it for, whatever time you've given it to have that experience, did it make your practice, did it make the results better, or was it more problems than it was worth? Are you going to revert back to that, or did it just give you a clue of how to refine what you're doing to make it better? How many of those things have we actually applied? So, it's like, I remember years and years ago now, like years and years ago, we were talking more about I was talking with Mark about, you know, um, you know, the difference even in going to seminars for most people. Like, I've always done this, and you probably have too, but not many people do anymore, right? It's like, you go to those seminars with a notebook and a pen ready to take down whatever ideas or whatever is going on, regardless of the handouts that are given out, if any, right? It's like, you want to take your own notes. And so I've always done that. I always have and force myself to do it even more so when I was conducting this experiment, right? Because I knew that I wouldn't have the time to sort of just let all this stuff and go back to it and back to it and back to it. So, when I sit down and for my 20 minutes or my 5 minutes, and, 4 times a day or whatever it is, I have a bit of, I had paper and pen with me, and, I'm jotting down anything that I think needs more investigation later. I'm just taking down a single, cryptic note about that, right? And saying, how it will enhance this, or what I should do that. And I'm a bit pedantic when it comes to, obviously with esoteric stuff, right? So it's like, I have a whole file cabinet filled with different topics, and, under general headings, and then, I slip, if it's something that I can't get to right away, I just slip the note inside there, and, for review later, and sort of, are you going to utilize this in your practice right now? Or is that going to be something that, you come back to later? Will you even remember, what that's about? And, is it a clue, or is it something that was just sort of like, look good at the time, but now that I think about it a little bit more, it doesn't really pan out. So, or I practice it and it doesn't pan out, and then I get rid of it, right? I don't have to entertain the thought anymore. It's one less confusion that's in my head. So, but how many people do that? It's on the internet all the time. You can always go back to it, but every time you go back to it, the chances that you'll get sucked into, a thread of ridiculousness,
Or
extends and
just
extends
a
and
thread of
extends.
novelty.
Novelty, yeah, just
Keep
keeps
you
going,
crave
right?
it.
It sucks you in. It doesn't want to let you go, and it's really insidious. It's like all under the guise of, you know, well, not always ridiculous distraction. It could be under the guise of information that's good for you, or even education. that's good for you. And it's like, but it's not. If you're not going to put it into practice, then it doesn't really have that value.
So I'm gonna push you to be specific in the parameters that you want to define for this 2BSilent challenge.
Yeah. Um, so I would
What
say
is
the length of time would be 42 days. I would say the minimum would be to, with regards to phone, it would be one of our members, Andrew, who's an IT guy, I believe. He had another good point of like how many times people just, if the phone is near them or whatever, it's like they just touch it to see, if anything came in that they missed. You know, it's insidious, right? It's just like it becomes such an unconscious habit. Even if you leave your phone, a couple desks away or on a counter in your house or whatever. How many people walk around the house with their phone in their hand?
Yeah.
It's like,
So
what the
okay, so
hell?
so what are we reducing it to though? Like
I
what
would
the
reduce it to no more than 20 minutes a day of anything, you know, regardless, of anything. Right.
outside of using it as a phone or communication device? Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Outside of like a text or a, whatever. And then even that, it's like as long as it's just communication, right? I would say, you know, um, see, here's one thing that I'm not sure of. Um, if like a drowning person, right, um, you take away the distraction part of it, the video part, the audio part, all of that, do you start grasping for other things like texting everybody because it just keeps the phone in your hand
hmm.
and you feel that you're connected, you know, by doing that? Does that supplant the, going and entertaining yourself, right? It's like you need somebody else to sort of validate your existence, so so it's so I would reduce it down and just keep an eye on that as well. Am I texting more now because I just need somebody to, I need to confirm that I'm actually here, or, whatever, that I exist, that I'm not struggling alone, that kind of thing. I don't know, it's like, it's funny, right?
And on the flip side, I would say like I have noticed that I've reached out to people in general more, but um I think of it as a positive because it's more like instead of it's not constant at all, but it's just like checking in on people a little more to just the people that I care about,
Right.
to say like, how you doing? And to me, that's like enhancing my relationships. And so it's like, that's
Yeah.
awesome,
It
like,
is, right? Because I
because
mean, it's
because
like
I'm
when
not
you
going
say
down
you
like
don't
a
have enough time, it's like you still have the 24 hours in a day, right? And so if
yeah.
we take the part out for ourselves and take the part out for work and take the part out for sleep, there's nothing left, right? And so if you're filling those other moments with junk, then it's like, okay, the things that supposedly every person would say are important to them, supposedly, right? And that's the key thing. It's like everybody lip services that it's important to me, but how many people actually act on that on a regular basis, as opposed to so easy and incognito just flipping on YouTube and watching something stupid,
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing to me, even I've even noticed like when I'm in person with people, the quality of attention that I give them is far better.
because you have more energy.
It's like it's not like a segue between points of novelty. It's
Right.
like, no, I'm totally here and like engaged, you
Right.
know. It's and it's not like I wasn't at all like that before, I
Yeah. Yeah.
was, but it's just
But how
I
much
can see
more
that
can you be,
it's
right?
an yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. Yeah, it's almost like yeah, it's almost like it really is almost like your brain is tired a little all the time.
Yep.
Because it's like constantly taking in time, constantly taking in,
It
processing,
has no time to
organizing to
recover. I mean, even
yeah.
in exercise physiology, right? It's like we
Yeah.
know that the
Yeah.
downtime is almost as it's as important as the workout time,
Right.
right? It's like every bodybuilder knows. It's like your muscles grow when you are relaxed,
Mhm.
not when you're in the gym. That's when you're breaking the shit down, right? And it's like, but the
Yeah.
regrowth happens when you're, resting. And
Mhm.
so they don't skimp on sleep. I mean, those guys sleep. It's not like, oh, they're not bold and brash about saying they only get 4 hours of sleep a night or some shit like that, right? It's like they don't scrimp on it because their whole thing is around getting bigger, getting stronger, more balanced, more, symmetrical, whatever it is, So yeah. So I think that eh, we give lip service to a lot of this stuff, but it's like, does it really, how much does it really matter to you? Are you willing to actually do something about it? And I think that that's, this is one of those things that sort of throws it in your face and says, well, according to your phone, you got 3 extra hours a day. What are you going to do with that? What are you going to put that? You give any high level entrepreneur 3 hour if you said to him, I'm going to wave a wand and give you 3 extra hours a day that you can do anything you want with, they'd be like giddy, right? That'd be
Well,
like
yeah.
like Alibaba, right? It's like
Yeah.
the genie would come out and be like, wow, 3 extra hours a day, holy crap, and so, but I don't know. It slips by us. And so we don't understand that. And I'm not saying you got to be driven and pounding every single moment of the day by far, right? You need time for your brain to relax and sort of go into contemplation mode, right? And
Mhm.
resort the information that you've put in there into a structure that you want. But how many people have the time to do that? By the time you get there, you're so damn exhausted from the day that it's like your brain, even sleeping, it takes hours for it to sort of calm down into a regular,
Mhm.
rhythm so that you can actually rest and recover. Right. It's like, I mean,
Yeah, it's
it's just incredible that we've gotten to that point,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
that the control is with us. That's the other part that's like just insidious, right? It's
Well,
like
but the
you're the jailer of your own cell.
but the in yeah, and the insidious part is that I think because for me at least, when I would hear people talking about like, oh, people spend this much time on their phones or this much time engaged in that or what, it's like it almost had this moralistic quality of like, oh, well, if you
Right.
do it less, it's better just cause that's better for you, cause, you know. But but the weird thing is like, what if it makes your life like so much better when you just don't when you have it's like what happens when you take that stuff away? What happens when that void has to be filled by something, your own thoughts, your own energy, your own like your own life.
Yeah, it's frightening for most people, I think, in the beginning.
How much
I think
better
there's a
could things
level of
be?
anxiety that's there as well, that's inherent in that. Like, some people that have grown up in this era, let's say the last 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So you're a
Yeah.
late teen, early 20s, you've never not known this sort of immersion into this stuff,
Mhm.
right? And so you might have an extremely anxious reaction to being cut off or cutting yourself off, right? Because nobody's doing it to you. We're asking people to do it to themselves, right? Just as an experiment to see, to really see, you know, do you feel better mentally, physically? Are you sleeping better? Are you more refreshed? you know do you have more physical energy or mental energy to apply to the things that you're saying are important to you? you know it's like, and the funny part is like the way that it all came about was like seeing this trend of, here's all the people that people, again, just throwing names out there, right? The people want to be, Ty Lopez or, Tim Ferriss or, name any of these other people that are at the top of their game, right? And whether it's financial, business, athletics, relationships, whatever, all of these people, right, that we look at and say like, oh, if I could only do like that, I'd be awesome, right? So it's like, so, but nobody is pointing out that all these people are, the trend for them, we point to like, they always get 8 hours of sleep, or they always, they get up at 4:30 in the morning every day and work out. They get up at 4:30 and check their email, and then they don't, what. So they're these high performance people that we sort of idealize and put on a pedestal, and everybody wants to be like them, especially in the United States, right? It's like everybody wants to be one of those guys. And and so everything that they utter, everything they put in their seminars, all of these things that they do, people are trying to do, right? And they buy programs to show them how to do this, and they go and do it. And I'm not saying they're not valuable; they are valuable, or they can be valuable. But the one thing that they're all doing that nobody's talking about is this trend of unplugging. And why is that? Well, to me, it's like, first of all, it's extremely difficult to do, and the more sucked in you are, the harder it will be, obviously, like any addict, right? It's like, you're going to deny that you have a problem, and you're going to have all kinds of excuses of why that helps you function the way that you function. And, if you take that away, you'll be less than, and, and it's part of you, and it's part of your, it just goes on and on. The excuses are endless of why you don't have a problem with it, and why it's good for you instead of everybody else, right? So, but that's one of those trends that we should be looking at. If you want to be, if you want to be like the 2% or the 10% or whatever it is, right? It's like, if that's the trend for them, why wouldn't you try that out? You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to purchase a damn thing, right? You don't have to study anything. You don't even have to have an end goal to apply it to, right? Just unplug, or reduce it at least to 20 minutes a day of anything, and then see, I think I mentioned with the members, that I think the one thing I would correct myself on is that I think initially I said, I included like music and things like that, which I would retract that and say music's fine. You should be listening to the music that you enjoy, as long as the message is positive for you. And, I'm not thinking death metal is going to do it for anybody, but, who knows? Whatever floats your boat, man, it's okay. If that gets you up and going, well, then good, so,
Well, Brian, some people would call AC/DC death metal, and that's one of your favorite bands. So
it is, and it's not.
I know that it's not, but I'm just saying some people would think
I
that
would
there's
say
no
that
difference.
they were
You
one of the
heard him
first
scream?
hedonistic groups. It's like, it's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll era, right? So, yeah.
So just so we're clear, sex,
Just
drugs,
so
and
we're
rock
clear,
and roll
yeah,
music does do it for you. And
there's
so-
definitely that, right? There's definitely that. I would definitely agree that it definitely changes your state. Let's say that, as all music should do. So yeah, so I just think that that's, it's amazing that we've been sucked in even to this, I don't even know what we want to call it, like self-help culture or whatever, but it's like, obviously the majority of those people are in, they're either doing business or, something like that, right? I mean, I would say the majority of the self-help industry is probably around business, and then, or building, your entrepreneurship or whatever it is, it's like, but there's plenty in other territories, relationships, and, other things as well, right? So, health, obviously. So, but it's like, I think it would just be, it would be an extremely interesting experiment for people to try and see, and just really, I mean, be brutally skeptic about it, and just go for it and see what happens, because you don't get to weigh in an opinion if you haven't done it. That's always my thing, right? It's like, if you haven't taken the time to really experience it, to really experiment with it and really judge it harshly on the merits, um, then you don't get a say about it, because your say is just speculation. It's not actual, information that you've gleaned from actually doing it. And so, um, I think that's a big deal. And it would be very interesting to see how many people actually do it, how many people try it and can't
Well,
do it.
technically, if somebody was doing it, it would take them 3 days to listen to this whole podcast.
That's right. That's right. So that's it. Yeah. And it's like, but that's okay. I mean, it's like, but like I said, I mean, as an experiment, I would just do it on one of the social medias that we say they should be, getting rid of, not getting rid of, but like reducing
Yeah,
their
yeah,
time
yeah,
on, right? But it's
yeah.
like, but that's how people are connected. So it's like, why wouldn't we put,
Spreading the message. All right, so the 2BSilent challenge, 42 days of using any screen, let's say, less than 20 minutes a day if it's outside of like work or basic communications.
right, right. So yeah. And that includes
Or
everything, right?
music.
Like, or music.
Music's okay. Basic
Music's got an
communications and
okay.
work,
It
because
gets a
that's like,
pass. It
but
gets a
anything
pass.
outside of that,
Yeah.
um,
So especially news, especially, I mean,
yeah,
even podcasts, informational stuff,
content,
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 informational shit. It's like, that's it.
content,
Good content, bad
novel
content. You
content,
get 20,
baby.
and I would speculate that, my hypothesis would be that the things that they do engage in for that 20 minutes a day are, they'll be able to discern it in a way that's, if it's good for them or bad for them, much
Yeah,
quicker as time goes on. And they'll intentionally, save up those minutes. It'll only be those things that are super important to them if they keep it to that standard, right?
yeah,
It's like they will literally become, what do they call it? They'll the most important thing to them will be curating their time so
yeah,
that they only get the most important information that they can then put into practice, right? Or utilize in some way that's going to make their life better,
yeah.
because they'll be more clear about it. I know there's more questions and answers there, but it gives people a place that they can actually do something and see what happens, right?
Yeah,
So it's an experience, right? It's an
right.
experiment, and the experiment produces an experience, right? And is that positive or negative, or what kind of curve does that go through, where it's like, it'll just max out your anxiety,
In the
and
beginning, it definitely, like, that's definitely something for people to know. Like, I mean, even for me, it's like I'm very engaged in my practice and meditation,
Mhm.
whatever, all these things. There's a big part of my life, and but even that, I mean, even with those things, it was like as soon as because I did it, I didn't do the reducing to 20 minutes a day. I did like reducing to like 2 minutes a day, or something like that.
Good.
So
Yeah.
because I just, again, like I had that kind of like, screw you, you're not gonna control
You're
me
not the
and
boss of me.
you're not the boss of me, dude. Like even when I was a little kid, I had that
Right.
so hard,
You're not the boss of me.
so hard.
Oh yeah.
And so it's just like, no, 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 no. I see what's going on here. But
Yeah.
man, the beginning, the first response was definitely, like you said, like legit withdrawal, anxiety, racing mind, super, extremely uncomfortable. I can't remember the last time that was consistently that uncomfortable physically and mentally. Not because it was uh like painful necessarily, but just extremely uncomfortable. And I could see how if I hadn't if I didn't have parameters and I hadn't made up my mind about what I was going to do, and I had some semblance of what to expect and why I was doing it and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have kind of a structure around it that would keep me in the game. I could see it would just be so, so easy to just drift right back into doing it before, because because that novelty and that content just it it's a yeah I guess is the right word a palliative. I mean, you're a medical
Yeah.
person, so
Yeah,
it's just
for
a
sure.
painkiller basically. It's
Yeah, or it keeps you stuck in the place where you are with the idea that everything's okay,
mhm,
but it's not okay,
yeah,
right? You still have the pain, you just can't feel it. You know, the pain is just an indicator, right? It's like there's something wrong there. It's like you still have the something wrong there, but you don't feel it anymore. So it's
right,
like, I mean, that's
yes,
anesthesia, right?
yes,
So
yes.
it's like, I mean, that's the whole thing. And it's like, you know, if somebody said to somebody bluntly, like, I'm going to give you, you know, anesthesia, I'm going to put you under anesthesia for your life, right? So it's like, you know, you're still going to, you know, your life's going to suck ass, but it's like you're not going to know it. You're going to think everything's okay, or this is just how it is, but it
Yeah.
really, you know, it really does suck ass. So it's like, and are you okay with that? And everybody goes, oh, sure. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
that'd be great. You know, I mean, that's the idea behind, you know, a lot of things. I mean, that's the basic understanding of like drug addiction or any kind of addiction, right? It's like
Yeah.
superimposing itself to band-aid, you know, the lack of other things in your life, right? And it becomes the priority to stay in that zone, right? Now we're back to Ready Player One again, right? So it's the tech version of an opioid, right? Or
And the first thing that you feel when you take that away is the pain.
pain, pain, because you know your brain's used to, you know, it's patterned now to run on this like novelty and, you know, like excessive overthinking about ridiculous shit, right? And the struggle of trying to bring your thought back to something productive, and you can't because these other things are, you know, wandering in and out.
Switching.
But it's like, yeah, but your brain's like, "Ugh," constantly. And then when you take the
Become a
input
log.
away, the brain's still like, okay, where is it? Is there something wrong because I'm not getting the input that I, you know, it's a pattern interrupt, and that pattern interrupt can be, you know, very uncomfortable once you realize what's going on there. And it's
Yeah.
like, and how many people will get, you know, will find some, I'm not even going to say frivolous. I'm just going to say something that seems legitimate to get them back in. You know, it's like, I can't
Yeah, you keep
function with
mentioning
this
that.
pain. I can't, you know, it's all, you
Yep.
know, it's sort of like the, you know, it's not, it seems to me that the conscious mind is very, very good at coming up with ridiculous, you know, not ridiculous, coming up with seemingly on first glance, you know, legitimate reasons to go back to your addiction. And you know, like we've said, you know, it's like, oh, half the stuff I listen to or whatever is educational. It's like, you know, you're wasting your time, you could be educating yourself, you could be
Mm,
there's so
mm.
much out there, it's like you're missing it. It's like, no. Again, education is mostly information until you put it into practice, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, it's just information, it's nothing else. And when you're just downloading information, it's like it becomes ridiculous after a while, right? Because you don't have the energy or the time to put any of it into practice to see what's valuable or not. So it all becomes the same thing, you know. And like you said, it's a palliative for actually having to do something and be able to focus your intent on whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, which for most people, I think in general, is a good life.
Yeah.
Why are
and
so
a
many
really
people
like
why are
engaged
people so many dissatisfied?
and a
It's
really
like with
like
their life.
engaged life. It's like we watch like I know it's kind of I feel like it's kind of silly and I hate using it as an example in some way. I'm sorry, but it's just I my head's in the game with it too because I've been I'm reading Harry Potter to my niece and it's
Yeah,
really
right.
fun and really
Yeah,
enjoyable. It's really cool to do with her and and but like there's these scenes in the book and there's these scenes in the movie, not like I said, like not ones where there's incredible magical things happening or people are teleporting or there's like the danger or the whatever. It's like the simple scenes of like people in the countryside or they're getting together at Ron's house and they're having breakfast all together and the birds are chirping outside and there's like the sunlight and or like the same kind of thing you get when you watch like Lord of the Rings and it's like all the hobbits in the Shire or something
right,
like
right,
that,
right. They're getting ready for a
It's
birthday
just like,
party and
yeah,
drinking
yeah,
ale
yeah.
and eating
Yeah.
cake.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah. There's this sense that like in those you get there's like this breathing room. There's this like space in those scenes where it's like people are they're just engaged in the moment. They're enjoying the sensory experience that they're having like around them, whether it's the food or the drink or the talk or the conversation with somebody that's close to them or whatever it is. And I feel like we watch these things that are so entertaining or so engaging and long for an experience, at least for me, like I have it's like feeling this like longing for life in general to be more like that. But what I wonder is like maybe if you just take away the distraction or this digital kind of like secondhand version of content of life, like because
yeah,
content is like just experience, right?
right,
So it's like, well, maybe if the digital novelty didn't seem so high and give you so much dopamine all the time and seems so great with like so much anticipation and where's it coming from next and like all that, maybe when things slowed down, like life could actually be more like that, or you'd actually feel like you could produce an energetic and physical space around you that actually was like that. It's like,
right. Because right. It's like, it's a good question for each person to ponder too. Like how, looking at a movie or whatever, or even those fantastical ones, right? It's like, or any of them, right? It's like we watch these scenes after one of the heroes thwarts the bad guys in one way or gets out of a bad situation, and then they have this poignant moment with their significant other or a child or God knows what, right? And um, and they're in this lull, and people want that to last longer. It's like that's the desire. It's like, and they're hoping that these people get more time, right, before the shit hits the fan again, right? It's like, but we want to see those scenes extended, because I think that's that respite, that because if you ask people like how they experience those films and they talk about it, it's like that's part of it, right? um but also, like, if you had no restrictions, if you had uh uh you know unlimited wealth, if you had a significant other, if you had um uh you know really good health, and you had a spiritual practice to whatever degree you would want, right? It's like with all of that unlimited, you know, um, wealth and whatever, would you be pounding it out every day? I mean, for some people, that is their enjoyment, right? It's like building empires and, seeing how far they can go and, God knows what, it's like for them, work is their rest. And, but for the average person, that's not the case. The reason they want to be independently wealthy is so they can relax and do what they want. And I think if you really pressed people on like what's your ideal day, I remember getting that from one of my first teachers, that assignment, and saying like, you know if you and this is going back right to like, like old school monastic territory where they would ask people, does, figure out what your ideal day would be, like a day that would repeat over and over and over again. What would it be? If you could only have a 24-hour day and you could only, and it was the same one over and over again, what would you design for your best day ever that would just continue? It's a night. It sounds so simplistic, but it's a really good exercise. Not many people would say, I'm working 16 hours a day. I'm sleeping 4 hours a night. I'm just shoving whatever food's available in my mouth, and I'm just cranking it out constantly. No,
In
yeah,
between, I'm downloading as much content as possible.
I'm watching as many cat videos as I can possibly find.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not going to be that, right? So it's like these things are all.
Ryan, you're so
It's
hard on cat videos and death metal. You're gonna you're gonna make
I
everybody so
know.
upset with you.
They're gonna be
You're such a
pitchforks and
bad guy.
torches out in front of my house. That's it. It's
Look
like,
at Kira shows me cute dog videos sometimes, and they're amazing. Okay. They bring a gentle, warm, loving feeling to your heart and a smile to your face, Brian. So
I'm sorry, but I would have to agree with the cute dog videos. I just
you just don't
let's
like cats.
let's
Okay.
really
Yeah.
bring down the boom now, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I would, I think that's it's a good way to look at these things. It's like, what would you actually do if you had everything that you wouldn't have to scrape out a living every day? What would you actually do? Even for you, right? It's like, would you spend 8 hours every day painting? Would you, and you may, right? If that was the thing, that might be your ideal, right? It's like, what, and they get pretty detailed, like what foods would you eat? When would you get up in the morning? How much sleep would you get? Would there be other people involved or not? Would you be alone? Like all of these things, we start looking at it. When people really take that exercise to heart and flesh it out, no matter how fantastical, I think the thing is, most people would say, like, there aren't many people that would actually day after day after day, including, the rich and famous, would want to fly to Paris for breakfast and New York City for lunch. And, it sounds novel and fun, but it's really like, that would be exhausting after a while if you had to do it day after day after day. It's like, nobody does that. And especially not the people that can do it financially and time-wise, right? They don't do that shit every day. Come on. So it's like, I think, designing that ideal day always keeps that in the forefront of your mind, so that everything that you do in those 4 territories is pointed toward developing that ideal day. And it's like, I would say that it took, after I made that list, I think it took a couple of years, at least maybe 3 years, before I could achieve one of those days. And then it's like, and ever since then, it's like, everything was, has been moving in that direction to produce more of those ideal days as often as possible. Right. So, but that's it. But it has very little to do with, um, it has more to do with the free time to engage in the things that really make you feel fulfilled, right? In all 4 of those territories. What is it that makes you feel fulfilled, in your success? What is it that makes you fulfilled in your relationships? What is it that makes you fulfilled in your health? What does it make you feel fulfilled in your spiritual pursuits, whatever they are, right? For some people, it might be doing yoga an hour a day, For other people, it might be meditating 3 hours a day. Who knows, right? Everybody's going to be a little bit different what their ideal scenario would be. So where they could truly be engaged in that, and not get bored with it over time. So but I feel like it's true. It's like, we have a tendency to, you know even the people that like action adventure movies, right, or those types of stories, it's like, yeah, but we I think even if they really analyze their feelings, they'd see that when they the places where they'd like to see it extended a little bit more would be those places where it's like, oh, the guy gets the girl and they have an intimate moment, or they, like, oh, there's a, they retire to a peaceful cottage in the country for whatever length of time. It's always too short, right? It's like, what if we could just, I mean, even in those movies, they say, what if we could just go away? We just leave all this behind and go away and just live a simple life in the country in Croatia, whatever. So it's like, even the characters are wishing that they could just live a peaceful, fulfilling life, right? What does that tell you? I mean, that's we're pulling that in from the collective unconscious. I mean, that's what people really want. um, we just have a really convoluted way of going about it, and we've been sucked into this idea that it's really, really, really complicated to do that. And I don't, I mean, obviously the jury's still out, but I don't think that it's as complicated as you know the powers that be have made you think it is.
Yeah.
And I think that that's another one of those things that would come up for people when they unplug. But I think that you know it takes some time for that to filter in,
And hence the 42 days.
hence the 42 days, because it may be after the 42 days when you realize how much better you feel, how much healthier you feel, how much more rested you feel, and how much more clear thinking you are, that you can then ponder those things in a very poignant way, with the end result of being like, how can I actually make that a reality? What can I do day to day to make that a reality? And there's very little of it that would be, well, you should watch this on YouTube, or you should do this, or you should do that. There's going to be very, very little of that
Yeah,
stuff.
but you forget, like, I feel like what happens is it becomes the norm so much that, and then the lack of that becomes the norm of the lack of that becomes discomfort, to the point where you forget that it can be better than it was without it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the interim,
Or better than it is without it. Yeah.
well, that's the DTs, right? Where it's like,
The
that's,
DTs.
yeah, that's a thing that happens in withdrawal. It's like delirium tremors, where your physical body is, sort of like trying to oust things. And in that ousting of the chemicals and whatever else, it's that, your body starts to break down a bit, and it goes into these neurological tremors, and you go into delirium, even, I mean, alcoholics, that was the first place we saw that, right? But it
Mm.
happens with most of these things. So, and you can see people get, when that first few days, right? It's like everybody can resist it for a day. I think if you can't, you're really in trouble. So it's like, but a day, 2 days, by the third day, though, it starts to creep in there, and you start getting a little fidgety, right? You get a little hyper frenetic, physically.
I was a basket case on the second day.
There you go. Right. So it's like, I mean, it's not just a mental thing, but you start looking for, like, there's a twitchiness that gets,
Twitchiness is, yeah.
that's the same thing. That's the same thing on a more reduced scale, less harmful scale physically, because DTs are really,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you can die from that. You can die from withdrawal, right? Physically, from an addictive substance. So, that's why it's, one of the really hard things to do in life, right? Just to go through that. So, I mean, we're not going to die from doing this, and but the gain on the other side, is the potential gain is so huge that it's hard not to make it sound like hyperbole, right?
And that's the thing. That was the thing for me when the content seemed informational or educational or like useful. It it was, it made it seem like life wouldn't be as good without it, because I would be what information am I not getting that could be so helpful to change my life right now? What's that next thing? What's that next thing that it's like, it's out there, it's out there. And if I listen to it, then things are going to be better and they're going to feel better and I'm going to feel better and things are going to be different. And
It's the same.
maybe.
It's the magic bullet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of these things. It's the panacea, right? The medicine that cures everything. The one thing that cures everything. The one, the magic bullet that will kill anything. Whatever, right? It's like, these are all I mean, that's sort of like the ideal of, some thought. I don't even know where that came from, but it's like something that's been going for a long time in humanity. Everybody's looking for the one thing, right, that will make your life fulfilled, whatever that is, right? And it's like, that's just a bad bill of goods that everybody wrote, that's signed on to, right? It's like, no. I mean, hence, if it was finance, everybody that had, independently, wealthy would be replete in every other of those three aspects, right? But we know their health sucks a lot of times. They got shit for relationships, and their spirituality may be non-existent or, whatever. I mean, it's like, it's not a guarantee, right? And the same thing with all the others, right? You can have perfect health and still have suck ass relationships. You can, or like, living in a box someplace because you can't hold a job because everything you do is in the gym. I don't know. It's like, there's all these things, right? It's like there isn't one thing that will, sort of trump all of the others, right? So it's like, yeah, that idea of a panacea or a magic bullet is just, it's dead, right? That's, it's still out there. People want it. Everybody wants it. The magic words that will conjure whatever, right? And your whole life will just be complete. It's like, it's in every aspect that I can think of. That's an idea that's out there and just been perpetuated forever. And I think keeps people spending money and running around and looking for that one thing rather than, a very expansive set of things that you include in your life over time, and you get rid of some and you upgrade to others and you do this and you do that to produce, a very fulfilling life in all of those areas. I think that's probably a better way to think about it. No master carpenter just puts one board down and says your house is done, right? It takes a lot of work and a lot of pieces to produce a house, right? So I look at all those things and it's like, I think that this has the potential to do that. It's not the only thing, but it's one that doesn't cost anybody anything and only gives you your attention back. But it's by taking something away, which, nobody's going to charge you for not looking at your phone or your computer. It's like, there's no taxing that. It's like, come on. So I'll probably get banned for this.
Oh yeah, man.
I'll be on Tim Cook's #1 hit list, and the Google guy and the Twitter
Censored
guy,
me.
all these other views. It's like they'll just all be hunting me. They'll be hunting me down. We know where that guy is.
Well, hopefully not, because I need to keep you around.
There's a giant gas explosion in the middle of the country in upstate New York. Boom. It's just a crater where Brian used to be. Gotta get that asshole out of there. How dare he?
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. So
all right,
there
cool,
you have
man.
it.
Well, this is great. I'm 1 week in, and hopefully anybody that listens to this will do their thing, get started. They can let us know how it goes. Send us an email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah. I'm good. Things are getting way better.
Yeah. Well, my prediction is that they will get much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
um,
that'll be pretty cool to see.
well, I'm glad you suggested it, and I hope everybody else feels that way too. So,
Yeah.
thanks for your thanks for hanging out with me today, Bri.
Yeah, no problem. I think this is a good one to post.
I agree. Consider it done.
Okay.
All right,
All right,
man.
man. I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, next Monday maybe.
Sounds good.
All
If
right.
not before,
Okay.
keep it loose.
Okay, sounds good.